let's move on and talk about this aviation inquiry. I'll be talking about that later, showing you some of the amazing work done by Bridget McKenzie in the Senate this week. We'll be talking to Matt Canavan shortly as well. And we've got Warren Mundine in the studio, so a huge show coming up this morning. But this aviation inquiry last week in the Senate looked very much at is trying to get to the bottom of, was there a quid pro quo between Qantas's support for the voice and the Albanese government simultaneously, Transport Minister Catherine King simultaneously rejecting the bid by Qatar Airways to fly more flights into Australia, which, having just been overseas, we desperately need more flights coming into Australia, let me tell you that. James, what did you make of Bridget McKenzie in her performance?
Bridget McKenzie performed spectacularly.
I agree.
She gave a spectacular performance, taking it right up to the new CEO, Vanessa Hudson, to Richard Goyder, the chairman of the board, who behaved, I thought, disgracefully, and this fellow Finch, who was
Dickensian character. He's straight out of a Dickens novel.
I don't know. He looked more like Patrick Bateman, frankly, but he he had this very sort of chiseled sort of look, and so supercilious, so smug, so utterly just irrefutably smug over everything. And the best moment in the whole thing, there were so many great moments. I mean, first of all, I love the fact that between, it wasn't just Bridget McKenzie. Bridget McKenzie led the charge. But, they said the voice was going to bring people together. No, it's actually the joint hearings on air services agreements that brought the country together, because you had Bridget McKenzie from the Nationals. You had Simon Birmingham, who is normally wet as Sydney Harbour on a rainy day. You had Tony Sheldon from the far left of the Labour Party. All of them hammering Qantas, deservedly so, on everything from Qatar to the S-23 to, the treatment of those maintenance workers who were horribly abused and the outsourcing of Australian labour to other companies
firing
and
people
other countries.
During COVID.
But beyond that, though, the whole thing also, I think, is going to start to get into more things, too. And I think I'd like to see this now start to have a real look at the chairman's lounge and the perquisites that go along with this. And this idea that this airline, unique to businesses, seems to be able to provide this sort of great untaxed fringe benefit to so many people who are in decision-making.
And also, you mentioned...
From judges to politicians. I mean, they are very calculated with who they invite into the chairman's lounge. Of course, Anthony Albanese's 23-year-old son is somehow a university student in there with the captains of industry. And
But this is peeling off this is the real-time world that we've often talked about here, of the Great Reset, of the elites, of this kind of joint governance, if you like, between left-wing governments and big corporations, sewing the whole thing up for their own interests. And there you saw it naked in front of you. And the superciliousness of the Finch character, which I'll be showing you later on in the show, really was the perfect metaphor for how the elites are dudding us all every day and pursuing this left-wing political agenda.
Completely incoherent position of Qantas, and yes, thank you for uniting the nation the way the voice never could, where you've got Goyder sitting there, the chairman, still praising Alan Joyce, saying we did nothing wrong, we just tried too hard, we tried to do too much for Australia. And then you've got the new CEO, who was there for most of the Joyce's time, saying, we're apologising, we're going to do better, we acknowledge the errors of our ways. So what is it, Qantas? At least stick to a lane, pick an argument.
This was a brand, let's just talk about the brand briefly. This was a brand that was absolutely loved and adored by Australians only a decade ago, until Joyce and his gang of left-wing virtue-signalling elitists got on board. They completely trashed the brand. It's going to take Qantas a long, long time to recover, if it ever does, the position it had pre-Alan Joyce. Speaking of...
Sorry, Ron, there's another point in all of this, too, which is, this issue resonated broadly with the public like nothing we've ever seen before. And I think part of the thing is that people are generally, and this is a message for the Liberal Party here, and if they really want to pick up this ball and run with it. The Liberal Party has been dudded over and over again by corporate Australia, which has decided, we don't need you, we're going to go Labour, we're going to support the voice, we're going to give money to the lefties and the greenies, and, we'll throw some money to you too as part of an even-handed sort of thing. But, we are firmly orientated to the left. There is a real opportunity, I think, for the Liberals, if they want to pick this ball up and run with it and say, Australians are being abused by very large corporations that have used their market power and their ability to get regulators to protect them. You know, we're talking about airlines, supermarkets, all sorts of businesses, banks, and there's very little competition, very little innovation, and, you know, they're protected by the government, and Australians pay the price, and we have a very, you know, overpriced and non-innovative economy. There's a real opportunity there for anybody who wants to go down that road.
The Liberals have this almost, unhealthy relationship with corporate Australia, where they cop the abuse, they cop the absolute contempt at times, because corporate Australia has again and again showed utter contempt for the values of conservative Australians, and yet the Libs still
they're customers for the values of their customers.
Shareholders through super funds. The biggest stakeholders are treated with utter disdain, and the Liberals need to stand up for their people, need to stand up for their voters.
They can, and hopefully they will under Peter Dutton. But what we saw under Morrison and Turnbull was a refusal to fight the culture wars. If you go back to the years of Tony Abbott, he was prepared to talk about the culture wars.
But the root cause, Rowan, of the culture wars...
The failure to do that is what has led to this.
Yeah, but the root cause of the culture wars, though, is that on another level, these companies absolutely love to have us fighting culture wars, because it means that we're not actually talking about their protected concentration of power that could be busted open if, you know, you were to change the rules around airlines, for example, in this one particular instance, because this is a great distraction as well.
Sure, absolutely. But the reality is that all these brands have found that it's much easier to forget about satisfying the customer and instead just grovel and kowtow to big government and take the contracts from big government and ignore the consumer. It's anti-democratic. It's verging on fascism, in my opinion. This is an opinion show.